Welcome everyone to our third installment of VR workshop called What is VR? In collaboration with Resonance Cinema. My name is Žiga Pavlovič. I am a creative lead for Kiblato Lab, a media laboratory in Maribor, Slovenia. And this is our third time coming together to talk about VR. In our first talk, that was already in about 3 months ago, we were talking in general about VR technologies, headsets, which ones are now on the market. And because of the situation with the quarantine, we also talked about kind of how to socialize in VR spaces. So like we talked about specific social VR spaces. In our second talk, we went more into what is VR cinema, how we can imagine, or how can we talk or imagine a cinema in a different way. Specifically because in VR we have a more immersive experience. We can have a virtual theater and watch kind of a 2D video or movie on a kind of simulated in a kind of simulated VR cinema. But we can also watch kind of VR experiences, non-interactive, which are made specifically for VR headsets. And now, today, we are gonna talk a little bit more about VR games, what makes them different from kind of what you're used to in a PC or desktop computing, and mobile games, and yeah, all the differences. So in general, what makes the specific part, what makes the transition to VR different is that you have a much more immersive body experience. Especially in the beginning, there were only headsets so it was just a headset without the hand controllers. And when people put it on, it was immediately it was you kind of felt the need to have a controller that you can then pick up stuff in kind of simulated VR world. You can pick it up, you can rotate it, so interact with the objects in VR space. And that led also to kind of very fun games that were dealing with interaction with hands. And nowadays we have a much more elaborated hand tracking, even on the Quest, for example, in the Oculus Quest, which is a standalone headset. You have, because from the cameras in front, you can track your hands without the need for any handheld controllers. So basically it can visualize your hands and simulate them as a kind of interactable objects inside games. And that kind of simplified a lot, simplified game development even for the VR headset, because now you don't need the controllers, and the controllers themselves sometimes they kind of limited the way how you can pick up objects, because you had buttons, you had to interact with the buttons when you were picking up stuff. But now it's much more intuitive because of the hands. So that is one aspect of it. And the second part is you have stereo vision, and because of that, you are much more immersed in the world. Whatever comes to you, the objects that are coming to you, you kind of experience them much more viscerally. You duck, you can change the position of yourself to move away from the objects, and therefore that becomes a game mechanic in the games. I will show you later some examples from the games that use this mechanic. And in terms of styles, I would say the most interesting ones are that make use of your body. There are specific kind of object avoidance games that deal with also, so you can kind of dance on the beat. And a lot of them had, for example, when you are playing a kind of a shooter style of game, you can duck behind covers, which before you had to do just with a control on a keyboard. But now it's much more intuitive, because you basically move your body and you can pick out from the corner just with a control with a headset. So it's a lot of kind of body movement, and you can use it for fitness also. So you can basically sweat if you want to. There are specific games who you can use for fitness. And I can also mention that whenever you have questions, you can also post them in the comments on the video, and I will talk about them a little bit later. So if you have any questions, just post your questions in the comments. And so, for example, and then also after at the end, we will talk more about how to start making kind of VR games if you have an inclination to try it. I will show you some examples of the programs you can download. They are free programs to start, and some how you can use libraries to start your Unity or start your VR game. This is specifically because you are invited to an event which will happen at the end of last few days of January, from 27th to 31st, which is a global game jam event, but we'll talk about it more later. Now, if we can switch to our examples, this is a, let me switch. Yes. So this is an example of, at the moment, still the most impressive representation of a VR game, which is called Alex. It is from Half-Life stories made by Valve, and they're basically a company which makes games only to innovate on storytelling or interactions. So this time when they make a new Half-Life game, they went with VR. That is their main approach. And you can see a gameplay example of a game which you can see the interactions with hands. This is specifically made for Valve headset also, but you can play it. You can play it also on other headsets. And this is there was a lot of focus made on how to utilize the interaction you have a lot. So this is a problem. And this was a problem at the beginning when the developers tried to transition from or made versions of their desktop games for VR. because it was not enough to just kind of make a different camera to view it in VR, so to make it stereoscopic, because you didn't have access to the keyboard, and you had to work with controllers. And you have just seen an example here where you have a kind of gravity interaction. So, for example, when you pick up objects from the floor, you don't have to just go down exactly to pick them up, but you can, for example, here you can just point with the hand, click on a button, and it has a kind of gravity effect. Because if you can imagine that if you would really have to come down and pick up objects, there would be a lot of crouching. But you can pick up objects, you can place them somewhere. There's a lot of magnetic effects, so it will help you to really position the objects where you want them. And here we had an example of navigation in the games. So this was teleportation, because if you would just have a normal kind of locomotion where you move with a button straight, kind of walking, you would have kind of sometimes a lot of kind of still motion sickness, because especially if you move fast in this kind of worlds, you don't have this, your body will start to think that something is wrong, because your eyes are seeing that you're moving, but your sense of position or balance will tell you that you're kind of sitting or standing, and something is not right. So that's what usually triggers the motion sickness. That was common at the beginning, but now with the design decisions the game developers make with interaction, help with minimizing this motion sickness. Developers use different techniques. Here we see you can move a little bit around, you can duck on the corners, but when you want to cross larger distances, you have to teleport. Probably you could choose, also sometimes you can choose to just kind of press the button and walk in a straight line where you're looking. But this is an option for people who want kind of that don't have problem with motion sickness. Another version of the game is this kind of more fitness game called Beat Saber, which I hope you can hear it. The music here is very important, and you can kind of cross it or think of garage band or rock band style games, where you have to kind of tap on the beat. And this is kind of what's kind of very, very popular game for VR. You have two controllers in the hand, which kind of makes them lightsabers, and then you try to hit these cubes in a manner where the pointers are showing. You can imagine that on a higher difficulty, this becomes a style. You have to memorize the sequence. But I have to say it's very engaging. You do kind of, when you get in the mood, you can also dance a little bit, and they have different styles of music that they make this kind of pattern to go through. There are competitions in these kinds of games. Usually you need to do some training, because usually they compete on the on the highest difficulty. So and they sometimes use mods visuals, so you can see if this kind of cues go very fast. You know that's a competition ready player. But what you're seeing right now is this is not how you look in original in the game, but this is made with a special program called Live. LIV, and this is to kind of show you, or kind of you can have an avatar, or you can show yourself with a with a camera. And this program helps you with streaming. So, for example, if you don't want to just show kind of straight your point of view, but you want to show yourself how you play the game, how you move yourself, you use this program to kind of make a virtual camera. You make a virtual camera from behind, and then showcase how you move. So even some people are like really dance types, so they use a lot of dance moves even in between. Okay. Check, we have some questions. Okay, so that were two examples of the game that, like, one is more static, one is more kind of immersive role-playing game, and there were examples. Let me check for a moment. What was good here? So there are kind of examples of games where there are a lot of RPG elements. For example, like the first part of Alex. There are more games that also want to make kind of immersive visual, that want to engross you in the world. But there are also some fun examples that focus more on the interaction. So, for example, you can have a sword, you can have a shield, or you can cast magic spells, and these kind of examples, like which is not possible on a PC. I mean, of course, you have games with sword and shield, but it's not the same, because if you can imagine, and you can only try it out on a VR headset. So if you would have a normal workshop, not from behind the computer, you would get a headset, you would try it on to see from your own experience how it looks like. But in this example, for in a scenario of sword and shield, you can imagine in one controller you have a shield, in another controller you have a sword, and this is a much more intuitive interaction, especially because on a PC you have to, or on a console you have a controller, kind of a console controller. But on a PC you have a mouse and keyboard, and if you want to block, you press a button and you block, and it's automatic, and it's kind of very systematic, very mathematical, not really in a how to say, not really kind of physical. So in a VR headset, you have a shield, you can hide behind it, you can bash, and this is not scripted. The only thing is that you have a what we call in game development a collider on a shield, and this collider tracks another character, for example, the enemy or that you fight with, and the only kind of physical interaction is then when you bash it. It's calculated just when it hits, and then the character can basically, how you hit it, you give it a force, so it's moved away. Basically, kind of simulates the shock from being hit by the shield. The same thing with sword. When you hit a character, it can calculate damage where you hit it like you would normally in a game, but you have no limitations on how much you can hit. So the developers had to come up with different solutions to not really encourage like quick bashing, but you kind of do try to make more calculated controls. More calculated hits. So, for example, you could imagine that if you would swing fast, you would have a much lower percentage of damage, and there would be a timer, for example, that would calculate how much time did it take from the last hit, and if for example there were at least 2 seconds, you would get a full damage count. So basically, you would then try to make a calculated decision on when to shield block, when to hit with the sword. So it's because in real life, when you have a sword, it's much heavier. So if you would do all the time, you would lose stamina very quickly, and that is not preferable in these situations. So even for in examples like you would have a whip. A whip you can simulate. For example, you would kind of have a whip in the hand, and it would have a physical, for example, a physical calculation. So based on how fast you move the controller on which direction, you can imagine that there would be behind the real physical calculation on where the end of the whip would come. And this is not really possible on a PC game or desktop game, because you don't have this kind of controller that would calculate how fast you swing and which direction. So these are all possible interactions possible in VR. And we have, so that was an example of using interactions. And some games, some VR games also utilize a specific sensor that is inside some headset, which is an eye controller. So this is a controller where it's just check. So this is a controller where or a sensor that tracks your eye movement, so where you're looking, and that was interesting in a one workshop that I was in, and used that kind of sensor, because you could make a game where every object is only visible outside of your basically in your peripheral vision, so not in your focus where you're looking, but only in your peripheral vision. So you could not look straight into the object, but you had to kind of look straight, but kind of imagine that you're looking sideways. And this could be possible with this eye tracking sensor inside a headset, because you calibrate it. So you have 4 corners on where you're looking at the beginning. So it calculates kind of your position. So then it understands if you're looking down, if you're looking left, or this is a mirrored camera, but basically if you're looking down, left, or right, into the corners. And then it can also, so this is kind of another type of controller that you can use in a game. You can probably program it in such a way that, like I said in an example, that you have characters that kind of disappear like ghosts when you're looking straight at them, or so they only appear in a kind of like you can see it, you can sort of sense it that it's there, but you can never really focus on it because it just disappears when you try to look at it. And probably you can make some kind of Schrodinger's cat situations with that, and call it a game. And these were like two examples, and there were also kind of sensors at the beginning, and probably still, that deal with the sense of smell. These were more controllers that not really controllers, but just kind of they try to immerse you more. So you have sound, eyes, and I mean, yes, and also controllers for interaction, but they also try to introduce the sense of smell. So you would get to see even you get to experience even more immersive situations with that. But you can't really use that as a controller, more just to put you into immersive state. Another thing is another thing would be a control. So you would have at the beginning very hand controllers that were very crude. So you would just have hands, or basically just track the position of the hands. But later on, they made controllers where, for example, you would also sense fingers. At the beginning, like for example, index knuckles controllers from the Index from Valve. Index is the name of the Valve headset. They introduced knuckles controllers where they have sensors. So, for example, you could point, you could say stop. So it would introduce some sensors in the controller that would sense how far your fingers are. So you could have hand gestures. You could make hand gestures with that, and so these were sensors on the controller. But later on, with the cameras, because the headset makers moved away from kind of sensors that track your headset with the cameras on the headset that kind of track the space in front of you. So you don't need any more base stations in your VR setup. And those cameras on the headset, they also made it possible to with a special algorithm to track your hands. And this is now we're back to the kind of hand tracking that I talked to you at the beginning. And this hand tracking then is it basically brings you the whole simulation of your hands, and so it brings you a 3D simulation of the hands, and then special algorithms then track your gestures. So, for example, pitch mode or a pinch gesture. So this is you can imagine for picking up objects, and probably and also there is one gesture when you close both on an object and separate, the objects would blow out, or if you put them close together, the object kind of closes in, and then you can use much more naturally your hand gestures. And this technology is also used in mixed reality headsets like HoloLens or Magic Leap, which are mixed reality. So you can see the real world, but there is a kind of transparent screen that also shows you digital objects and which are placed in your real world. And that those headsets don't use controllers, but they can track your gestures. Similar thing can be made with certain hardware sensors that were made before the VR headsets. like lip motion sensor, which is now kind of old but still a very good sensor. It's also very I'm very happy to use it in a lot of projects because it's a like very small sensor, and you place it on a table, and then it tracks your hands, so you can use it for your interactive projects. It kind of works like a small Kinect, which was the sensor that came with the first or the second Xbox 360, and then later on Xbox One. But they discontinued the Kinect sensor because it was not very popular. But it is, as a sensor, is very useful for art and interaction projects because it senses the person. It then tracks the body, makes a skeleton, and there the new versions can even scan the face, so you can program interaction, so an interactive experience where the experience interacts with the person in front of it. It can be also multiple persons because some sensors they support multiple people at the same time. But the most, for example, one of the projects that I worked with, had to do with, for like, you had a big screen, the person came in front of that screen and could see itself because the Kinect sensor also has a camera. But then it would kind of before Instagram and before the AR filters on the phone could generate objects like a hat or generate special features around it. So you would have this kind of augmented reality situations on the screen. But you can also make games with it. And one example was where you stand in front, you can see objects falling on the floor. But if you make a big cup, you can imagine the objects falling inside your kind of ball you make with your hands, and then you can transfer those objects to another side and score points for it. And so basically you would move from one side of the screen to another and transfer the objects with your kind of ball gesture. And this is a more let's say group game, because you could work with more people, and you can showcase it outside, like in a public square, which in a VR headset is a little bit harder to do because it's a singular experience and you would need more of them. And so now I'm going to switch into talking more about the Global Game Jam, which is an event that combines or brings together professionals, brings together, if you just want to experiment, you want to find out the community. So it's not just for game developers, it's open to everyone. These kind of events are organized locally. So I'm from Slovenia. We organize a Slovenia Global Game Jam event. But if you're from the so if you're not from Slovenia, you can check on the Global Game Jam page. You can search your city, you can search your country, and check out where is the kind of local game jam event in your area. So this is so you can go to Global Game Jam. This is the page. This is the page you can you see it the first time you go to the event, and this is this is a type of it's not exactly a hackathon, if you're more familiar with that word, because hackathon usually is more competitive. You come with a group, you kind of have challenges before the event, and you usually have, on a hackathon, you usually have some kind of monetary rewards. Global Game Jam is a much more community driven. It's much more relaxed. It's not a competition. You can come as a kind of individual. You don't have to come with a group. Actually, it's preferable that you kind of set yourself as an individual. And it used to be. So basically, because of the quarantine, this year it's online for the first time. Usually, it's organized at a place which can offer sleeping arrangements or not. Usually, it's preferable that you have somewhere to sleep, because you have only 48 hours. You have only 48 hours to make a game with a group. And usually at the start, we started on Fridays at 6 or 5 in the afternoon. And the first thing you would get is a theme, which is the theme is shared with all the local events when the Global Game Jam is happening, because this is the connecting part that kind of connects all these local events together, and there are a lot of so because it happens in the whole world, there are a lot of places and a lot of games made each year. I think there are like over 7,000 games, and this time is online. It starts on Wednesday, the 27th. Usually, again, it will start in the afternoon, probably on some online like Discord or Slack or any other platform that your local organizers will tell you about before. And it will start with, again, the theme, and so the announcement of the theme. You have some keynote keynote speakers before to kind of hype you up, and then you go into brainstorming phase, and this is where you will try to get an idea rolling based on the theme, and you will pitch your idea in about differently 2 hours. Sometimes it takes for brainstorm, especially if you have a lot of participants. It can take a long time to kind of talk to everyone and kind of get through a few iterations for your idea. And then you pitch. You have very short time to pitch, about a minute or even less, and make it as interesting as possible to try to get teammates, more people like that you need in a team. So like you need a programmer, do you need a 3D or 2D designer? You need someone to make you music for the game or sound effects. And then if your idea has to do a lot with the voice, maybe you need a voice actor. So there is a lot of different jobs to fill. You don't need to be skilled. There is a lot of ways how to do a very simple game. The idea is not to make a really good production game. The idea is to experiment, to make it interesting, especially in terms of gameplay. So if it's fun to play and you kind of have a start and finish of the game, then you're golden. You have made a good game. So kind of on the first day, usually you kind of get a team together, and then next day you can sleep over it, think a little bit more. You start designing. You start writing sketches on a paper. Start kind of getting to figure out how to which jobs, what to do, what the people have to do, and then you start making it. And you have until Sunday until let's say 5 o'clock sometimes, and you have a strict deadline. You have to finish at a strict deadline. Usually there are a lot of last minute corrections because of bugs, and then you finish and present your game. And this is the last part where you kind of can put your air out and relax, or I should say put your air in, and relax and just hang out with other people. And you don't have to be working all the time. The idea of this event is to network, to kind of get to know other people, get to have fun with them, so socialize, maybe learn something from more experienced participants, especially, for example, what programs they use, maybe some techniques. And specifically with the Slovenia Global Game Jam that we are organizing, we are making some pre-events that will be streamed online, that will kind of to make you more familiar with some tools, to give you a quick start for the jam, especially if you're starting out and want to maybe learn some skills just before you're going to the jam. And especially if you're a programmer or a designer and you want to familiarize with the software that it's probably most used on global game jams. So this is called Unity, and so Unity 3D, and they have a special. Okay, first I'll try to I'll tell you something about the software. So each game needs a. So you have, for example, assets which can be sounds, illustrations, 3D models, and then you need to combine them together, and then you make interactions. You program or script interactions, controls, mechanics, and you need an engine for that. And so it's basically this program. Unity is a game engine, and it brings all of these assets and scripts together to run the game. And Unity is the most popular. You have a lot of tutorials in a learning section. You have from the beginning. So you have very easy learning, so basic, and the whole platform Unity Learn is it's very good, kind of organized. To start, they even made gamification kind of styles that get you motivated a little bit more. But they have a whole kind of journey from the beginning to the more advanced topics. So you can learn a lot just by going to the learning section in Unity. And the Unity itself is popular because it has a lot of support for different interaction sensors, for example. All of these sensors that I talked, Leap Motion, Kinect, they all have a library they usually, all these providers give you a kind of a set of libraries that you can import into Unity, and it's kind of plugin that helps you kickstart your project. So you don't have to program all of the controls for the sensors yourself, but usually there is already a Unity scene, a pre-made Unity scene that you can modify, and all the interactions with the sensors or VR headset is already programmed in. So it has a lot of support for multiple platforms. Also, you can make a PC game, you can make a VR game, you can make a mobile game. So it's a very, very versatile engine. One alternative, for example, is Unreal Engine, which is a much more, I would say, much more PC-based, a lot of console, or also for consoles. And it focuses much more on graphical presentation. So a lot of high-end AAA games that rely on hyper-realistic graphics use Unreal Engine, but it's a little harder to jump in. So it uses a different coding language. It does have a visual scripting tool that you can combine program with combining nodes instead of just writing script, and so does Unity. But usually Unity is a much better engine to just jump into, and so you can just check it out and go into the learning section and try it out. So you're all welcome. You're all welcome to join the Global Game Jam event. We prepared a little bit of. So you're all welcome to join the Global Game Jam event. And we have one question, which is, what are the biggest limitations in creating a VR game? And I would say a limitation is so if you're normally starting from, or just starting if you're familiar more with PC games or desktop or consoles with the use of controller or a keyboard, is that you have to think in terms of designing interactions differently, because what works on a desktop game in terms of interaction, it's very different on a VR. So basically, you have to try a lot of VR games first to see what works in terms of interaction, what doesn't, so this is in terms of kind of developing and interactions. But in general, the kind of limitation of the VR game is you can't really play it for 6 hours. I mean, if it's a VR game where you're just sitting and usually you have a headset just for the stereoscopic immersion, maybe, but usually all of the VR games are made for much more active role, and you get tired very quickly, and also that might be a reason why at the beginning it's not so, I would say, mainstream. It's not so mainstream to kind of see people discussing playing VR games, or kind of they're still a niche sector, because it's not really. You can't really just kind of relax on a couch, play a game. A lot of games today are cinematic, so basically you're kind of watching a movie, or you're just there to relax and cut the noise from outside. The VR games are much more active. So you're not on a couch. You're standing. You're walking around. You're crouching. So it's not always a relaxing experience. So it's much more active. You have to prepare. You kind of sometimes have a timing. You kind of schedule your session because you kind of have to jump in the mood for it. And some people really switch just to VR games and just use those, play a lot of those. A lot of in social VR experiences, for example, they interact much more with other people and use kind of VR headset for that. But otherwise, it's I mean, it's not always either or, but a lot of time it is, because it's a different time. So we have another question. So Svetli 24, everything is changing so fast. How can one be up to date with all the new tendencies in the game industry, especially in VR gaming? Well, we got used to it, actually. I mean, you can spend time with just browsing for new information all the time. I usually get my information from newsletters just to keep a little bit up to date. But there is a caveat too, right? If you're looking too much into what's new, it kind of takes your focus. So a lot of times you're just you can have a sense of, oh my God, so much things are happening. A lot of people are making this and this, and then you look at yourself and you're like, oh, like, am I falling behind? But not really. It's just an effect because today we have so much information coming, and you can see what a lot of people are doing, and you have a sense that you are missing out. But my recommendation is it's a cliche recommendation, but it works, that you kind of focus on your thing that you're doing, and maybe sometimes like have a kind of update yourself, like actively kind of look around. Or if you have a meetup, for example, for a local group, because you're asking me about the game industry, if you have a meetup, like a local group that deals with game design or VR development, it's a good opportunity to kind of discuss something and learn something new. Because if you're just checking the news all the time, it can be very overwhelming. But if you're interested just in kind of VR games, it's I mean, a lot of VR games are interesting to try, but usually when you pick your what your favorite style, you maybe try a few. But even myself, I don't really play a lot of VR games. I tried Beat Saber and Alex. I mean, I tried a lot of kind of VR experiences before, but VR games are when I come home and when I just want to relax. It's easier to just maybe sometimes watch a movie, which is ironic because I do program and work for interactive experiences, but sometimes it's it's you just need like a different outlet for relaxing. And Tina is asking, do you think that the number of VR games players, so the number of VR, so the number of players that play VR games increased during the COVID? I'm probably most certainly yes, because the sales of VR headset went up. So you can imagine that you have more people coming into VR space and playing games. Which ones? It's a question. Maybe if I could do research like Steam games, Steam. So Steam as a game platform is very useful to track which games are popular, which games are getting players up, and because of the massive disappointment of Cyberpunk 2077, I mean it's a shame, but that it is how it is. Maybe some people have tried a VR headset because of that reason, but I also imagine that because on YouTube there is I'm seeing more and more streamers using VR, but usually most of them are in social VR spaces because it's interactive with other people and it's much more engaging. So it's they're streaming. For example, VR chat is then most popular as a VR social space, which, like as a platform itself, VR chat also offers game developers to kind of design kind of game-like experiences. So you could program a game for your own hub. So hubs are your kind of controlled instances, spaces where you can invite other people, and you can also program those in Unity. So you can create like a game experience inside the hub and upload it to VR chat service, and then interact inside VR chat platform, invite people to your game, and be there as avatars, which is very effective to kind of test your kind of VR ideas. It's as a kind of engine, it's limited, so you don't really. There are some limitations on what you can do with interactions. And of course graphics, because low poly graphics usually. But it is a fun platform to experiment new VR ideas. We have another question. So from Sheshmeister, finishing a good VR game is basically impossible for indie devs without budget. Even if you are really good, you will be left behind in one point of development. What are your thoughts on that? Well, if you start making a VR game, I mean, it's actually, I mean, I wouldn't imagine that it's harder to do than a desktop game. Usually, because of the limitations of headset, you can come by. You don't really need to focus on graphics that much, especially if you're an indie dev. You have an opportunity to focus more on interactions. This is my recommendation for all that want to try. Focus on game interactions, game loops, game design. So make your game fun with interactions. The graphics come later, so you don't really have to spend a lot of money on getting a 3D designer, assets, and things like that. So it's just more to do thinking of how to implement mechanics and program them. So and I mean, you if you learn Unity and kind of experiment with different design decisions in terms of gameplay, you can go far. Especially in the beginning, the most, like when it started, the most interesting games were not graphically impressive, but they were interesting because they introduced new mechanics, like when kind of these new design paradigms for VR interactions are coming up. I remember one example of of the game where it was a simulation of drums, right? You could like play virtual drums, and it became very popular. And like the Beat Saber example, you can make a game like a style of Beat Saber very quickly. I mean, the other hand is if you want to earn money with it, then of course you have to think about the art style. But there are a lot of indie games that are interesting to play. They offer something, a unique experience, but they are made with very low poly, aesthetically, in terms of art direction, very aesthetically pleasing, but still low poly models, which works great for VR because there are also limitations, and you would need to know a lot of optimizations. Like for the Valve Alyx, so for Half-Life Alyx, you would need to know a lot of knowledge of optimization to really make it graphically impressive for a VR headset. But as an indie developer, you don't need that. So you're left behind at one point in development. I mean, if you're quick on that and release it, it's good. It's good then to have someone to help you with publishing if you want to publish it and actually bring it in front of people, because they're like these finishing touches and fixing bugs can be a lot of frustrating, and I can imagine that a lot of people stop at these last 10%, and those are the most important ones. And so yeah, I had a global game jam. So if there's any more questions, free to have a few more minutes to add to that. Otherwise, I said minutes. I meant seconds. But thank you very much for participating. You can send me, so I can just write you down. If you're interested to join the jam, you can search for Slovenia Game Jam on Facebook, where you will find the link to our Slovenia Game Jam on the Global Game Jam page, where you can register, and you will get all the information on which platforms to start and join us on the event. And thank you very much for participating in this virtual presentation for VR games and game development for VR. And next time we will talk more about, it will be a different kind of presentation, more to do with the also current situations in how to stream, how to operate, like to make streaming presentations like this one. And we'll also talk about more about virtual avatars. So you don't have to use the camera to present yourself over Zoom or Skype or as a streamer on YouTube, because in the last year it became very popular as a virtual kind of avatar, virtual YouTuber style of streaming. And we'll talk about also more about that because it has a lot to do with VR technologies. So we combine the streaming techniques with VR style of virtual avatars. And yeah,